sista presentation och sen så blir det mer samtal. Och då är det Lorenzo Romito som kommer från Rom, som är utbildad bland annat i arkitektur och filosofi, så han passar ju ganska bra in här nu som tredje punkt, tror jag. Han är del av en grupp, kanske man kan kalla dem, som kallar sig för Stalker, som skapades för 20 år sedan. Det är inget kollektiv, utan det är en ganska öppen sammansättning av konstnärer, arkitekter och andra som arbetar med att utforska staden och arkitektur, men också att skapa utrymme och nytt liv i stadsmiljöer. De har jobbat mycket i Rom, men också rört på sig väldigt mycket i hela Europa och andra länder också. Men nu ska jag låta Lorenzo visa bilder och prata själv. Please.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you, everybody. How to put this into a presentation figure? What's the Swedish word for it? Thank you. Okay, I didn't get the introduction, but I believe I'm very happy to be here because it seems very interesting. The discussion until now has been very, very interesting. Maybe, as Olivier said, maybe I could give a contribution for that answer. I mean, how do you start to get people that are not interested into something? They don't know what it is. I think we give for granted that they are not interested, but we don't give for granted that has to be something they don't know what it is. Because if it's something they already know what it is, they still maybe not interested into that. So I will go through the work, now it's 20 years this year, of our exploration of places in transformations. It's a path that started a long while ago in '95, but has its root definitely in this moment I like to start with, which is the moment when we as students we occupied the university, and it was very crucial because we kept the university for 3 months, and we had to experiment ourselves educational tools, how to build educational tools. We had the chance to encounter people from other disciplines, artists and philosophers. I was trained as an architect at the time, and to deal with the lack of tools to face the big changes that we were so enthusiastic about. I mean, this was 1990. The wall just fell down, and there was a brand new world to discover, and an enormous enthusiasm that it seems that we are prepared, mature enough to live in a new way. But then 2001, we found out that was over. It was just a how you call it? A moment of pleasure. I go from there to this image. In 1993, as every city, Rome was full of abandoned areas, factories, places that were not useful anymore. And one was very central in Rome was next to the river banks, and it was abandoned because they wanted to build a huge complex of houses over the old factories. So the citizens organized a group, and I knew one of these persons. They called me and said, we should do something about it. And all we did, we opened up a path along the riverbanks, and we took advantage of the fact that the neighborhoods were changing their shutters at the window, and we throw the shutter down to create a path to enter this wild world. And it was so incredible that tons of people came, and it was incredible to realize that they were living there and they had no knowledge of this place. This kind of drug addict, it's dangerous, monsters. No, the idea of this place was very full of it was an incredible imaginary. So we started to and we asked all the artists, the architects, landscape designers, to make interventions along this path, and the path was growing just with the money collected with a little bar that at the beginning of the path we built. And so a big cable of electricity, and then, but in the end, the most crucial thing for us was the path. We repeat the experiment the next year, and it was even more successful. And when things get too successful, we have kind of an attitude which is nomadic, so we kind of get away. So we are not the kind of person that lasts too long. It's usually 3 years. It's perfect time to realize when it's time to go. But we were very much impressed. So the next year, instead of making the same festival, we said, why don't we create a path through the all abandoned areas of the city? Why don't we do a tour of the city of Rome, never getting out of the city, never getting out of the highway belt that surrounds the périphérique, that surrounds the city, but never getting in the places of everyday life? No? So kind of exploring the system of abandoned spaces that in the 90s got to be very wide, especially in a city like Rome, where not just abandoned factories, but a lot of also abandoned agricultural land. Rome, it's a huge city in terms of space. I believe it's the biggest city in the world. It's bigger than Moscow, bigger than London. It's 1,100 and more square kilometers. So we started to like the idea of, how do you go on? Yeah. To just walk as a practice. And of course, there's something that should change the approach you have. I mean, if you're next to your house and you're looking for a new world. So there's something that has to allow this. So the first question that came out is how to enter, and if we should be taking the responsibility to go there where you're not supposed to go. So I call it the responsibility. Someone would call it a transpasser or a passer. But we started from that. We just jumped any kind of fence and started to enter those spaces and cross them. And it was pretty intriguing because we were designing relationships in between leftovers of our civilization, let's say failed ideas of planning, and the reappropriation that nature did of all that. And this whole becoming of thing was unpredictable, completely unpredictable, intriguing and beautiful, and it needed. And we realized that our own path was creating the narrative and the cartography, the first cartography of this space. So we started to take advantage, to encounter, to put ourselves available to be transformed by the condition of space and by what the space could teach us. So try to be part of this mutating becoming of things by walking across, by like primary, walking. It's a very simple thing, and it's something that used to keep us very much related now to earth and to sky. I mean, that's the Taoism. Tao means it's the ideogram for head and feet, and in the humankind it's this link first of all. But we lost this kind of very comfortable experience that gives sense to what happened to us. Now we are so displaced now by so many medias that we completely lost that confidence, and we were just looking for finding back this confidence in doing things. And then, I mean, here I found a little dromedary camel, and this was a highway under construction, and we started to dream about camels running here. So we gave the dromodromo a place for camel races, and we started to name places and to make. It was incredible that things were happening to us, and we were just not planning our action, but we were discovering the sense that our action was getting in the making of this. And this continuous feeling of transpassing also keeps you alive, keeps you aware, keeps you so aware about space. I mean, there's some possible dangers and things. So you reenact all your senses that we have incredible tools to know space that we forgot about, and we don't know how to use them. And this kind of this kind of attitude started to be very useful. And then we even, in a very naive way, and we started to celebrate sites and give them importance and give them names. So this is an action with flour and then wine to celebrate this. These are simply the blocks that should have been thrown in the river. They were sitting like a line, and it was itself an artwork with no artist. So this was the really beginning. And this is the map we made out of the experience, which is a map of Rome, that for us it became a brand new planet. After 5 days sleeping and inhabiting this other dimension of the city was really pretty much an initiation in this brand new world. So with this map we just draw yellow the part that everybody knows about the city, the contemporary city. And then we made all the background where we were, what we crossed, blue as a sea. So the city becomes immediately an archipelago, depth inside a fluid space of possibilities that had nothing to do with that we call it in counterposition to contemporary. To the contemporary city, we call it the actual territories. The actual territory is something that becomes beyond our wishes, our willings, that it changes on its own, and that should teach us how to adapt, to change, how to cultivate spontaneity, to embrace change in our linguistic frames and comprehend. So the idea as architect for us, the idea of instead of changing spaces, started to be changed by space as a fundamental practice in a moment where we believed, and I still believe, even if it's a long time ago, that we had no tools through our academical discipline to understand what was going on there. And we had to elaborate new tools and new ways. And these tools had to do also with inhabiting, exploring and inhabiting space, inhabiting this changing space. So we call this the actual territory, and we started to invite people to artists, architects, researchers, inhabitants, in a collective action of naming places and celebrating places, give name to place. So the first action we did, it was in occasion of a festival, and this is an aqueduct that used to be the shelter of a lot of refugees after the war, and this is Pasolini poems that was there after the war and was walking around the area, and by seeing this, a certain moment it starts to rain, and he sees the streets turning blue. So we painted the old street blue for 100 meters in reclaiming Pasolini as a reference in our way of understanding the city. Another more intriguing maybe work that we did, celebration that we did, this is another site that was a place where Robert Smithson, who's an American land artist, did an intervention. That was the postcard of the opening of the exhibition in 1968. I remember well, yes. And that circle marks this quarry where get extracted the stone to produce the asphalt. And so after almost 30 years, we were there. But the situation really changed. This is the quarry, and the beautiful countryside of Rome turned into a big social housing complex. And so the whole natural environment that he was celebrating by underlining a quarry of asphalt and the concept of entropy, the production of disorder inside the natural context, he did it through, sorry, I didn't say that. He did it by pouring asphalt on the site of the site of the quarry. The image on the back, the black and white image, it's from Robert Smithson's work. But what we found is that the pipe brought to get the water, because to cut the stone you need water. I mean, once the quarry was abandoned, it produced a lake, and migrant birds stops in this lake. And all around, it's pretty much chaotic urban, suburban periphery environment. And this turned to be a natural, a brand new complex and natural environment. So we, I wrote a text about it, but anyway, the question was, there's not just entropy, there's not just a process of creating chaos, but by chance it happens that new orders take place, and we lack the tools to understand the way and how these forms of complexity get produced. And so since Robert Smithson, I should go faster because this is going to take a long time, but since Robert Smithson used to explain entropy, I want to use the stage as you did, to use entropy concept, he talks in a beautiful text, he talks about two piles of sand, black sand and white sand. And then he talks about kids that they run over the sand and the old sand turned gray. And then he says, if the kids run backwards, the sands would not go back black and white. So this was his very primary and clear explication of entropy. But also this creativity of kids can also discover and celebrate the possibility that new orders comes out. And this is negentropy concept that we, in the end, we didn't do much. We just used ourselves to run down the same hill, like the kids of his story, and to celebrate the appearing of this new complexity. So this has also to do, our first manifesto about this practice was also about understanding that we don't understand. And sometimes the best way, before even attempt to understand, it's to respect what we don't know and respect the abandonment. The abandonment, it's one of the more careful way to, it's one of the best way to take care of what we don't know. So sometimes we don't have to renew, replan, rethink, but things are sitting there, and in their sitting there spontaneously, probably are becoming something else, are changing, are continuously changing, and we have to learn how to deal with that. So this habit of exploring brought us also, we did sometimes some artworks, but just as a side effect of this continuous process of try to understand what the hell we were doing. Because we started, we didn't know, we still don't know, and it's already 20 years it's happening. So this is the idea of inhabiting this space was very important. I mean, inhabiting space, inhabiting the gap of comprehension, inhabiting the misunderstanding. It's another beautiful thing, you know. When you sit around in a table and there's something you should be said and nobody speaks, and I love those moments because they are very fertile. If you break the situation, incredible things could come out. There is the non-said. It's so huge that could become something, could explode into a new possibility. So this became the way we used to do it with textile, painting textile. We used to bring with us this painting textile and build these amacarios. It's huge spaces, just you hang it on trees, or this was an abandoned station, transformed into a festival place, so hanging to the roots, and these were 3.5 kilometers of textiles that we used to have laying down hundreds and hundreds of people. Well, I go faster. We started to by inhabiting this kind of place, you start to encounter people. And because there's also people that inhabit this place. And maybe they're not so curious. Not everybody's so curious about, someone just does it because has to hide or doesn't have the right to expose himself in the contemporary city. And so an incredible occasion came in the moment that 3,000 refugees from Turkish Kurdish Turkish refugees came to Rome following their leader Öcalan, that was home arrested in a hospital, while the government was kind of understanding if it should give it back or not to the Turks. The Turks were smashing all the stores, Italian stores in Istanbul. So it was a very critical moment, and we had all this community of Kurds. Beside the political issue, they started to create an incredible environment just with cardboards inside the ruins next to the Colosseum of the Roman terms. And this was immediately turned into an actual territory. Even if it was in the center of Rome, nobody went there anymore. Everybody was just simply walking around it, just like disappear from the mental map of the citizens. So we went there, we encountered them, and since we had an occasion to participate to a festival inside an abandoned slaughterhouse that took place in half of the slaughterhouse that was renovated for the festival. But the other half of the slaughterhouse was still abandoned and was hosting the stables of those carriages that take tourists around the city, but also was hosting a social center and was hosting a gypsy community and a series of diverse clandestine migrants that were hiding or living in there. So we asked this yellow fence was the fence of the festival, and we asked the festival. We knew the guy somehow, and we were called for making a workshop with students for architecture, and we asked just to get a coma inside the abandoned part of it, and we squatted a building, the ex-veterinary building and we asked the Kurdish community, do you want to share a place to make your issue visible in the city? Would you like to, can we build this place together? Can we, and this is how we started to settle for a while, because we settled in this slaughterhouse for 4 or 5 years, definitely until 2001, 2002. 2005, 2004, 2005. The environment was pretty wild, very spontaneous. But an incredible set of rules was managed by the inhabitants of this place. So we wanted to, we become part of this. And we didn't come in as artists or architects. We were just one of the community there. But also we brought the Kurds. And this also was kind of becoming a problem. So let's say, what do we have in common? How do we start a strategy to link all these people living in this place to something? I mean, we cannot, and we found out that the only thing that linked everybody is that nobody had permit to stay. Nobody had a regular document. So we made this document for everybody, which is a non-identity card, and we started to give it to everybody, and that was the way to approach the different communities and start imagining a way of, an idea of coexistence, no? So we call this as a border to be transformed in a public experimental space to explore the chance of coexistence in a becoming metropolis. And so we gave an international call. I mean, that was 99, internet was not so successful as today, but incredibly also people from very far away started to arrive. And we started to use this courtyard in front of the Kurdish center, which is right here. And to use it to experiment possibilities to do things together, very simply. First problem we had to face is that Kurds and Gypsy didn't get along. They had problems, prejudiced. Also marginal people as a prejudice. Everybody has prejudice. And the Gypsy thought the Kurds were terrorists. The Kurds thought Gypsy were stealers. And so we said, okay, let's do something. And we took the chance, by chance, we didn't plan it. A Japanese friend came, and she's an artist, and she was doing this pop-up cafe. She was preparing food in the streets of Tokyo to make people stop and create public space just by the action of eating together. So we asked her to help us in the making of the first lunch in history in between Kurds, Gypsy, and Japanese. So the idea of making the first lunch in history was pretty much successful, because it was not a serious idea, and was giving very much importance to everybody. So this was the first action. We designed a circle And everybody came by, and the other community say, "Oh, this is the common space. You're ready squad. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't do anything, build anything in there." That's everybody say, "No, we just want to make a lunch." So we started to engage. We asked the kids, the gypsy kids, to bring the chairs and the tables from their caravans, and we invited the city, because also, citizens usually were very scared to enter this kind of strange place. And in this sense, the lunch was pretty much successful, because a lot of people came, and our action there started to become popular, even if hardly tolerated by the city of Rome, which we tried to engage in this process. At the time, I was fellow at the French Academy, so we had the support of the French Academy. We were working together with a foundation, Olivetti Foundation, in Rome, but we couldn't get the participation of the city of Rome, because this idea of supporting this spontaneous, dirty stuff was not in their program. And in the year 2000, we got invited for the first time in the Venice Biennale of Architecture. And in the same time, we were invited in the Manifesta Biennale of Art that took place in Ljubljana, very close to Venice, but on the other side. At the time, Slovenia was not yet part of Europe, and that border was still the east-west border, and was one of the places through which a majority of refugees try to enter Europe. Yeah, we know the issue of refugees. I know it's kind of new feeling for you have to deal with this, but we have been dealing this in a long, long while. And so we proposed this project, Transborder Line, the infrastructure to support the free circulation of people. And we proposed it, try to create collaboration between an art biennale, an architectural biennale, and Villa Medici, where also there was an exhibition, La Ville, Le Jardin, La Mémoire, that used to take place in those years. And we tried to create a strategy across institutions to get help. So like Ljubljana could have bought the soccer balls, Venice could have paid any kind of transportation but couldn't buy materials, according with their way of institutional attitude. So we try to sneak around the institutional attitude and to create collaboration. So we throw 2,000 soccer balls in the courtyard, and we ask all our friends there, this is going to Biennale, it's the time for you, if you have some kind of claiming for something, you want to tell a story, whatever you want to write on the balls, you can do it. And then, okay, so the balls were all written. We took the 2,000 soccer balls in Venice and Ljubljana, and we did, in the meanwhile of two border control, we built one transborder line on the River Isonzo, which is actually the border in between Italy and Slovenia. The interesting, the tricky thing is that it was a very playful. The idea was to transform borders in playful, experimental space for cultural confrontation. So before engaging, the globalization is reducing, collapsing distances. It does not give time to understand. It does not give the possibility to step forward something else or someone else. So we are losing that important distance to comprehend. So the reaction to that, it's this enormous amount of walls building around the world. So we wanted to use this space and create a way to inhabit it and to experiment there the possibility of going beyond the cruel chance to exclude the other. But of course, by all the writings, people were so playful, but then you realize also you were playing with people's stories, lives. So it was kind of tricky in the way it was. We also got a ticket because we asked all the public of the Venice Biennale to play out of the Biennale with the soccer balls until Piazza San Marco in the center of Venice. And this is the last work I want to show about this time, which more of work, an artwork, but sits in the same idea to instigate the possibility by creation to create coexistence. That sits also with the idea that a community has to be rebuilt and have to be rebuilt in between local and nomads. There's no other way to build it. There's no other way to renovate Europe. And this is a great opportunity we have. And so it's a creative social process that has to be started up in the attempt of the making of this. This was the year 2000, and this ceiling on the above, it's beautiful Muslim ceiling inside a Palatine chapel in Palermo. Palermo in the 11th century was actually were the Normans coming from here in a very few number. They conquered Sicily because they got called as military, they got called as soldiers, as fighters, mercenaires, come si dice? They were paid to fight by Arabs and Christians. And then at a certain point they realized they were so tough that they made their own kingdom, which also was an incredible kingdom because they never asked everybody to learn their language. That was very successful. But they accepted 3 officially Arab, Latin, Greek, and Jewish speaking in their. And so to symbolize that, the king chapel had a ceiling done by Muslim, a floor done by Roman cosmati, Latin tradition, let's say, and on the sides were mosaics from the Greek tradition. And probably it was used for different cults, even if this is not granted. Historical historians, they don't. There are some historians saying that, but the academy is not recognizing this yet as possible. So something has to happen before we discover this past. And so we got called, maybe I'm just taking way too much time. We got called to reproduce this very beautiful ceiling. It's Mukarna ceiling, this kind of very complex, and this was the Ministry of Foreign Affairs that asked us that, and a foundation in Sicily, Orestiadi, that was an art foundation. So we thought, this is an incredible chance to give work to our Kurdish friends, because Kurds, any seeker for asylum is not allowed to work until he gets its permits of asylum. So these are the guys that were inhabiting our center, Ararat, that we built with them, they were just sitting like that all day and really not doing much. So we took the responsibility to give them work, even if they were not allowed, and we asked for a big budget to reproduce this ceiling. We made a 3D model, and we reproduced with ropes. We used 44 kilometers of ropes, and each rope, 41 kilometers of rope, and there were 44,000 ropes in the end, and each rope had a copper cylinder that at the end linked to it. And this is a view from the bottom. And in the end, we took 2.5 months. We gave work to 20 guys. And it was an incredible process. The idea of shaping this artwork, that was also very successful. The most successful thing was the Vice Ministry of Foreign Affairs shaking hand to seekers for asylum not recognized yet for the work they did. And nobody was there really trying to understand how this whole thing took place, because the whole process of doing it basically was illegal according with the Italian laws. This also was the end of our permanence, of our staying in the slaughterhouse, because this work started to tour all the Arab world together, an exhibition that called Islam in Sicily that was recalling the relationship in between Sicily and the Islamic world. Exhibition that had a lot of troubles also because of the war, but this is another story that started. This is some of the places where the flying carpet. Okay, we did more and more actions. We initiated the celebration of the Kurdish fest of New Year's fest in Rome, where they make a huge fire. This is now becoming a more and more popular event in the city. And also we took advantage of situation. The patrimony excavated to make a sondage about the archaeological traces in the area, because they're still thinking to renovate the area, and they've been doing this for years now. And they excavate, they broke the asphalt, and then they put land on it. So it was a perfect chance to create a garden. And we invite the citizens. Actually, we invited musicians. We went and chose the musician on the tram, all the gypsy musicians and the subway. They were playing there. We created a big band, and all together we built this garden that it's getting more and more. This nature grows, and it's fantastic for that. So this is the beginning of a certain engagement of younger artists and also internationally with us in a very non-academical educational path that we started to take around the world. How much time do I have still?
Yes, it's okay. 10 minutes?
10 minutes? 10 minutes. So I jumped this.
No.
See, very fast. We started to work on this big social housing complex in Rome. Wait, now I would put a stop. I mean, this whole thing was called Stalker. Stalker was a name that we took after Tarkovsky movie. I don't know if you know this movie. It's an incredible movie because Stalker crosses the zone that changes according with the feeling of the people that crosses it. So we loved this idea, and we realized that because we didn't even pick the name. It was a journalist, when we told them what we were doing, say, but this is like the movie Stalker. So we saw the movie, we loved the movie, and we took the name. And this is just to say that we start to do things that we really don't know what they are, and we really believe that, as probably as I understood you said, but I'm not sure, but that it's action that mobilizes, that shakes the possibility of thinking. If we think the action, we become dangerous in the results. Well, if we experiment things, especially with a playful, open attitude, we can discover things that can be then cultivated and attempted to be brought to some kind, emerge out of their spontaneous context and become possibilities, traces of possible futures, a way to understand the becoming of things instead of always with this male Western attitude imposing our very sometimes silly ideas to reality, and then having to realize that they didn't work, and we have to work again on that. This is one of these crazy ideas that 1 kilometer building, 9,000 people living in it. Also beautiful idea somehow, but it never worked out because it was based on a concept that the 4th floor was all used for services, shops, galleries. But the regulation of City of Rome doesn't allow to build shops over the 3rd floor, so it never happened to be that. And what it happened to be was the 4th floor was squatted, and we have this social complex, very formal, with a very informal shanty town in the middle. So we started to work. I go very fast. We started to work not anymore as Stalker, but we started to realize that our practice had to maintain this naivety, this spontaneity, this energetic kind of effort towards the unknown. And we were facing Sussex somehow. We were in the Biennale. We were called Italian miracles. So too much Sussex that can kill you. The Sussex is best killer for any experimentation. And so we said, okay, we need to develop this practice through collaboration that can translate and preserve the spontaneity of this action to the institutional world, to the academical world. So we started to engage, people to observe us doing things, basically, and also to translate it into, and also to participate. So this is we worked 3 years in this social housing complex. We faced some crucial questions. The first question was the image of the place. The image of the place was used to any kind of problems in any kind of periphery of the nation. So always the newspaper only had in the newspaper archive, they only had that image for any kind of problematic situation. So we had to challenge that question. So we started to build with the inhabitants a television to change the imaginary of the place. Then we started also with this idea of university. We started to collaborate with several schools and students. We integrate in our project younger studies of architecture, and we open up a university to learn from inhabitants from the way that they've been inhabiting for 20 years this place, to learn from them how they changed the place, all the transformation they were mapping all the transformation the inhabitants did, and we started to analyze how the strategy of living made possible those changes. And so we built the project of renovation of the building on the knowledge basis of the transformation done by the inhabitants, which was very successful because the inhabitants loved the project of transformation. They loved the project we made, so they were inside with us with the project. And the third question was also being there, inhabiting. I mean, we really stayed there. We rented a house, and we started to invite all the planners, the politicians, the architects to this apartment for lunch to see what they did after 20 years, to realize, I mean, probably they'd never been in the built environment of this great idea they thought about. And so this was another way to inhabit the gap in between the plan and reality. That sometimes it's a huge gap, which is critical, but also has to be analyzed for any kind of possible change. I mean, there is no tabula rasa, as Olivier was saying. There is no chance. It's not that there is no tabula rasa. It's not that we just for planning, but no site is a tabula rasa. Each site has an incredible amount of things to say, and that can help us to find the way to act and to operate. So this was the television program was pretty much successful and was bought by a satellite channel, so it was pretty popular. This is the mapping of all the transformation of the inhabitants that also led us to make the general plan of renovation of the building. Then the municipality that actually invited us, because this was one of the few public commissions. We were called by municipality of Rome through Foundation Olivetti to work on site. In the moment we organized the inhabitants in experimental condominiums, and we cooperate with them to design not just the project, not just the actions, but also the project of renovation. We started to be problematic because something was emerging from the place that was successful for the inhabitants and for us, but was tracing the path to follow which was not the path designed by the city, and that we got excluded by the competition, even if we prepared all the materials for the competition, for formal mistake in the presentation of the bag. The bag of the envelope of our project was not even opened in the competition when it took place. This I skip, otherwise. Going back to Rome, Corviale still represent the possibility. Osservatorio Nomade and Corviale project, this building, we were growing, and we had chance to official collaborations with institutions in Italy and mostly abroad. So we had a big office at the time, and we had a lot of young people working with us. And at a certain point, everything became very critical around 2007, because we started to engage ourselves in the question of gypsy. The gypsy in Rome. There was a wide criminalization of all marginal realities in the city in those years, and including the fact that the gypsy community of the slaughterhouse has been evicted. It was evicted to renovate the area, actually to build the city of alternative economies, a leftist project to gather all the new form of economy into some kind of common sphere. And it was incredible that they used the leftist association to move away the gypsy from the site. We made laboratories with the gypsy, and we include the gypsy in the project, proposing a metal laboratory because they were all metal workers. In the end, didn't work out, so the whole community was evicted. And a general eviction started to take place everywhere. There was no more tolerance to any form or any informality in the city. This was also, it was yet a central left government, not yet but it prepared the way for the right government coming, because they, in fear of the right, they were doing exactly the same thing. So the mayor of Rome, in public, in television, said that he was proud that he evicted 3,000 people. And so we say that this was a mass deportation, and we started a political conflict with the administration. Since then, we never work anymore with the public administration of the city of Rome. But we had to do something. So together with the students we had in the course of my colleague Francesco, and students from Roma Tre, we started to explore the riverbanks, where again, it seems that very criminal situation took place. And we walk from the sea out of Rome all the way up for 30 kilometers on the two sides, and we mapped and encountered all the informal communities that started to live, had to live. So since they were called gypsy and they were called losers, that they don't want to work, we started to find out that they're all people needed in the big project of transformation of the city, that were needed as labor, but not paid enough to rent an apartment. So we had a big amount of people that was living in these conditions. So we called for the city for sleeping one day, all together under a bridge, together with the homeless. And this also was together with some French friends that in the Canal de Saint-Martin in Paris were doing the same thing. And this was a kid that the family moved. I mean, he was he was called. He was a brave violinist, and he was called to come to Rome and participate in the Santa Cecilia, in the auditorium orchestra. But of course, the family didn't have the money to it, so they were sleeping under those bridges. But he was there, and we started to face the fact that all this eviction brought to a brand new, fantastic idea of building solidarity villages outside the city of Rome. So big container camps that collect, let's say, gypsies in wide number. This is the map of one of them under construction. And I mean, the reference to camps was evident. And so we started we continued working with them. This camp had no fresh water. The water was kept from the site, was full of sand and salty. So we bottled the water, the solidarity water, and we gave it to the city council. We sent it to the city council. We started to arrange in this camp the second sleep out, the second event, calling the people from all the cities sleeping in Rome together with them. Everything was ready. There was a television program that talked about it. They were very against the situation. The night before the event, they came and say, we cannot do it. We cannot do anything. Tomorrow, nothing has to happen there. Somehow, the city tried to corrupt them, proposing them a lot of changes if they would have not accepted this moment of visibility. And the same thing happened, and this was the most critical moment. The white night of Rome, we got called for a project of a rest place in the city, and we proposed 50 beds with 50 old ladies, gypsy ladies, telling stories to people who wanted to lay down under the sky and relax during the white night. And this project was censored because the gypsy women were not considered European, and the white night was dedicated to European culture. So we had to escape. And this is the moment when, at the time I was teaching the international program in Holland, TU Delft, and we brought the students of Delft and the students of Rome and other students that wanted together with this project. We rented 9 campers, and we started with them to explore the gypsy camp and live with them. Again, inhabiting, learning from them, learning the way they survive, learning the way they cope in the social management of kids, in the way they build houses, especially the building houses, since we're students of architecture was. And we started to elaborate strategies how to face this criminalization of poverty that was taking place And we produce a magazine, the Roma Time. Roma, it's the plural of Rome, Gypsy, but also the name of the city. And this is all the sketches that came out. This is Triennale project. We presented the strategy, how to get out of this. We started to question ourselves. How can we get rid of this problem? For sure, a transnational European project passport would have been a useful idea for non-national communities like Gypsy. A minority law that includes Gypsies, it's the only minority in Italy not including any law. The closing of any concentration camp and just giving them a piece of land, they would build the houses. They're very good at it. So to demonstrate that, a movie came out, documentaries came with us, but this documentary was never put online on the Italian television. We took one of the camps we were working with, this community. Our question became also the banners of the exhibition, of the demonstration, the first demonstration of Gypsy. We started to help their self-organization, and then we decided, okay, you are very good at it, let's build a house. We grant the normative frame, you build the house. We grant that this has to, as regular standards for building in Italy. Because they live in containers, which supposedly are temporary, but even if it's 30 years, they live in that. But containers, they don't respect any standard of Italy. They're not supposed to respect. And this house, we got some money from the university just for the wood, was fully built by different communities of Gypsy that actually gathered and built their representative through the process of making the house. And this is when, a certain point, the house was put on fire one night. The perfect responsible for the Gypsy community that was enthusiastic of our project and started work with us to use this strategy to cancel the camps was removed by the Berlusconi government from the city of Rome. And this is the moment where we really realized that sometimes finding solution, it's a problem. It's not that the solution we are looking for. I mean, of course, it's a very different context from yours. I don't want to generalize anything, and I really think that this is also over in Italy. But at a certain point, we said it was collaborationism, working with institutions in Italy and in the city of Rome. So this is when, I don't have 2 minutes, just to say. This is when this is Venice Biennale 2008, and I started to point out, okay, so the change happens by chance. Our mistake produces the possibilities, let's say the feedback our mistake creates the possibility of something to change, but we don't look at those changes because we are so much concentrated on our ideas that fail that we don't understand what kind of transformation they physically produce that could. So how to face this process of change, how to engage. At the moment, we had no reference in institutions, so we said, we proposed these two models. This is I Ching, I don't know, it's this divinatory practice, Chinese practice. And these two symbols represent the falling apart and the turning point. They're they're in sequence, and they're done by the same elements, but just upside down. This is the falling apart. The description, it's very architectonical. It says, there is a stage in life where things seems to collapse, where all the inhabitants start to take away the floors, and they're almost taking away the roof of the house. But at that point, it's the point where the energy has to come from the bottom. And when the energy comes from the bottom, the little energy of the broken roof becomes the motor, the engine for the change, and reenacts the change from the bottom. I mean, there is a text about it on our website. So in the end, we did the I Ching. The question posed by the question the Biennale wanted, it's what is the future of architecture? And we said there is no future in contemporary. Contemporary is this perennial moment that leads any future to become a project, to sit somewhere in the present. And which is, so the only thing is that you should find yourself the way, and you should know about the position. So we were basically responding to the question, we were doing the I Ching to the all visitors of the Architecture Biennale. But also this was just to say that we had to take care of and be very careful to what spontaneously it takes place. And we should start from that. And we should just cultivate that. So what we did, and I had to reach this point, then I stopped. We started to engage the city of Rome. We sent an open letter. Romans, Romanians, Roms, citizens from all over the world, it's time that we start to walk all together. And we started to promote those Roman Springs, starting the 21st of March and ending 21st of June, systematically exploring all the transformation sites of the city. We walked 2,000 kilometers in 3 years, and we gathered hundreds and hundreds of different communities that they were producing their own tools to face the crisis and to reappropriate space and to develop economies and to develop practices, whether it's bikers or... and so this idea of this nomadic common space and nomadic common knowledge produced by the big diversity of people that started to join this experience, and the possibility of knowing about site by experiencing it, by the presence of an inhabitant, by the presence of an expert, by the presence of a clandestine that lives there. Also this social attitude to step a little bit forward and transpass a bit more the boundaries when you think you have the right to know the abuse of public space that takes place by speculations process. And so this is started to grow as a movement and go and visit. I mean, this is just refugees. They're celebrating their Zoroastrian New Year's from Afghan. We encounter millions of very different situations. We produce a community that started to search for its own behaviors, to inhabit a world that we were kind of creating, discovering by the way of together doing this. At a certain point, we reenacted the foundation of the city, which was around a hall that was called Mundus, that gave name to the word world. And so we reenacted to recall all the places, all the people, all the stories we encountered. This is another map. Our actual territory are now critical areas, abandoned, not defined. Around this whole area, was built in the last 15 years. It's brand new neighborhoods, neighborhoods for rich, neighborhoods for poor, neighborhoods for black, neighborhoods for white, neighborhoods very homogeneous, where the city doesn't exist anymore because it doesn't exist a square, doesn't exist a place where people encounter. I mean, you only see people like you in your own neighborhood. So we started to think these abandoned areas were the places where to reinvent the commoning of shaping practices of reappropriation country. This is a gypsy friend that made a map of our walks. And the dots are all the communities we were gathering. So we started to promote social creative actions, not anymore as artists, but we were inviting the people. One thing was the enormous amount of olive trees that now they're just sitting in the middle of squares. And so we called for harvesting all the olives. So we were harvesting olives everywhere. We made the public oil of Rome, olio puro, public of Rome. Then we had this very critical moment in 2011 where the African seeker for asylum, not yet recognized as refugees, anyway good enough to work in the country of the south of Italy, were demonstrate against their condition of work. And they got kicked out by Calabria, by cities, pushed by mafia. They were kicked out because they were claiming for their rights. So they moved to Rome. There was a squat, a social center that hosted them. And together with them, we organized this huge harvesting of oranges, because they usually work in harvesting oranges in the south. And we made tons of cans of marmalade. And we distribute this through the critical social buyers group that are now organized in the city. And we collected money. I mean, the idea of socializing work itself. I mean, it seems that work is becoming more and more a marginal thing. It can be fun. It can be a way to rediscover the way things get done, because we don't know how to build a house, we don't know how to make jam, we don't know how to make oil, and there's a lot of things we can learn through that. For us, it's a knowledge experience, and can produce a value. Also an economical value, because in the end we collected enough money to send to our African friends in the south of Italy to create a social center in the space. Very last, the same aqueduct of the beginning, we found out a priest that create a school. One of these labor priests, or this socialist priest engaged in the 60s, was living in the shacks and create a school in the shacks. And he was claiming for a label that recalled that story. In the moment now the shacks are a park, a beautiful archaeological park. Just few traces here of the time where people were living in it. So all together with the workers, we engrave a non-legal monument about the history of the school that we along with these words, we located on site. I would stop because I think I took a long way more time. I have to just to say that I'm very curious in the process you're building here. I believe your institutions are different institutions, but anyway, the question of how institutional can relate to the urges and the needs of the city and the citizens, it's an open creative question that has for artists a crucial role, but also artists has to realize that authoriality and reference to that, it's the city and they're not the museums. I mean, this is another also important question, because sometimes in those processes we had to deal with very good friends, fantastic photographers that come and take pictures. And I mean, it's important to this reciprocity with communities. When you work with people, you know you're getting something out of them. I mean, knowledge today, you get it out of refugees, you get it out of gypsy, you get it out of marginal people. I mean, these are the most interesting places to learn. This is what we are doing now, a school, a nomadic school through Italy with international schools, because I think there is a lot to learn still from this world. And I don't know, I think you need to inhabit the place to find a way, to be extraneous and inhabit, because if it's your own home, maybe you don't find the hint to do it, but to find an equilibrium, it's always very hard. I mean, we know we gentrify places. We know our work produce changes that in the end can be very critical for the people we were thinking to help. And also this idea of helping, it's very... I don't think I ever really thought to help someone else. I really think I was there because I wanted to learn out of this situation, out of these people. I think I think it's very important we put ourselves in this condition of not doing things for the others, which is pretty much wrong, and usually it's a little bit hypocrite. But I think there's many ways to engage, responding to the first question, there's many ways to engage uninterested people into a process, if that has to do with, thinking and reflecting on your life, changing the way of living, and if it produces an imaginary, and if it gives them a position of creation. Because very often participatory process, they just invite people to subscribe what it's already there defined by the institution. So, of course, people don't really get interested in that. Thank you.